How workplace narcissists use the same tactics as political manipulators. You went home from work today and you could not explain why you felt so bad. Nothing dramatic happened. No screaming, no obvious confrontation, just a meeting where your idea got credited to someone else. A comment from your manager that sounded like a compliment but left you feeling smaller. An email chain where you were copied last after decisions had already been made without you. And tonight you are sitting with this low-grade feeling that something is wrong, that you are somehow failing. That maybe you are just not cut out for this. You are not failing. You are being managed, not in the professional sense, in the psychological one. And the person doing it learned these tactics from the same playbook that runs political manipulation at the national level. Same structures, same sequence, same psychological impact on the target. Today I'm going to show you that playbook word for word, because once you see it in your workplace, you will never unsee it. And you will stop blaming yourself for how it makes you feel. Here is why this matters more than you realize. Most people spend more waking hours at work than anywhere else in their lives, which means a manipulative workplace environment has more daily access to your psychology than almost any other force in your life. And unlike a relationship you can choose to leave, a job carries financial consequences that make the exit calculation complicated. That complexity is not an accident. Workplace narcissists understand it and they use it. Research on workplace psychological abuse consistently shows that targets of narcissistic managers report the same symptom profile as targets of narcissistic intimate partners: chronic self-doubt, hypervigilance around one person's moods, reduced performance caused directly by the psychological weight of the environment, and a persistent inability to clearly articulate what is wrong even when they know something is. That inability to articulate it is a feature of the manipulation, not a reflection of your intelligence. Here are the 5 tactics workplace narcissists use, and exactly how each one maps to the political manipulation playbook. The first tactic is public credit theft paired with private blame assignment. In political manipulation, this is called narrative control. The leader takes credit for wins publicly and assigns blame for losses to others just as publicly. The population sees a leader who succeeds and subordinates who fail. The actual distribution of credit and responsibility is invisible. In your workplace, it looks like this. Your manager presents your idea in the meeting without attribution. When it succeeds, their leadership is praised. When a project fails, your name appears in the conversation in a way that would not have happened if it had succeeded. The behavioral signature is specific. Track over time who gets named when things go well and who gets named when things go wrong. In a narcissistic workplace environment, that pattern will be consistent and it will not be random. The reason this works psychologically is that it operates below the threshold of obvious injustice. Each individual instance is deniable. It was a fast-moving meeting. They forgot to mention you. It was not intentional. But the pattern across months is a deliberate architecture of credit and blame that serves one person. The second tactic is moving goalposts. In political manipulation, this is called permanent dissatisfaction as a control mechanism. The population is kept in a constant state of striving toward a goal that keeps moving. The promise of stability or reward is always just out of reach. This keeps the population compliant, working harder and dependent on the leader's approval for a sense of progress. In your workplace, it looks like this. You hit the target they set. The target moves, you adapt to the new standard. The standard shifts again. The feedback you receive is always focused on the gap between where you are and where you need to be, never on the distance you have already covered. This is not performance management, it is psychological tethering. The specific impact on your brain is measurable. Research on unpredictable reward cycles shows that when the criteria for success keep changing, the brain enters a state of chronic low-grade threat activation. You work harder not because you are motivated, but because your nervous system is trying to eliminate the threat of failure. And because the goalposts keep moving, the threat never resolves. You are not underperforming. You are being kept in permanent pursuit of an approval that was never going to arrive. The third tactic is triangulation. In political manipulation, triangulation is the use of a third party, a rival nation, a political opponent, a media figure to create pressure on a target without direct confrontation. The leader never has to be the source of the threat. The threat comes from outside. The leader positions themselves as the person managing it. In your workplace, it looks like this. Your manager mentions casually that other team members have expressed concerns about your work, or that leadership upstairs has been asking questions, or that someone else is being considered for the opportunity you were working toward. The source of the pressure is always vague, always third party, always unverifiable. What this does psychologically is create anxiety with no addressable target. You cannot resolve a conflict with an unnamed colleague who may or may not have said something to someone. You cannot defend yourself against a concern that has not been formally stated. So instead you become hypervigilant, people-pleasing across the entire team, and increasingly dependent on your manager for reassurance that things are okay, which is precisely where they want you. The fourth tactic is strategic exclusion. In political manipulation, this is the isolation mechanism described in previous videos. Reduce access to outside perspectives. Make the target dependent on a single information Control who has access to whom and when. In your workplace, it looks like this. You are left off email threads that affect your work. You find out about decisions after they have been made. You are excluded from meetings where your input would be relevant. And when you raise this, the explanation is always logistical, an oversight, a scheduling conflict. Things move fast. Individually, each instance is explainable. Collectively, they produce a specific effect. You are operating with less information than the people around you, which means you are making decisions, producing work, and presenting yourself professionally with a systematically incomplete picture. And when your work reflects that incomplete picture, the blame lands on you. Strategic exclusion is how a workplace narcissist makes a competent person appear incompetent, not by undermining their skills, by controlling their access to what they need to use those skills effectively. The fifth tactic is the performance of fairness. This is the most sophisticated tactic on the list and the hardest to name because it looks the most like good management. In political manipulation, this is the leader who publicly champions transparency, accountability, and the rule of law while privately operating without any of those constraints. The performance of the value is the cover for its violation. In your workplace, it looks like this. Your manager holds one-on-ones where they ask how you are doing and appear to listen. They use the language of psychological safety and open communication. They publicly position themselves as advocates for their team, and then none of it is reflected in how decisions actually get made. The feedback stays vague. The credit still flows in one direction. The exclusions continue. The goalposts keep moving. The performance of fairness is specifically designed to prevent you from naming what is happening. Because every time you try to articulate the problem, the manager can point to one-on-ones, the open-door policy, and team-building exercises as evidence that the environment is healthy. You are not imagining the gap between the performance and the reality. That gap is the tactic. Here is how to recognize you are dealing with a workplace narcissist right now. Your anxiety at work centers on one specific person's perception of you more than on your actual work quality. You feel relieved rather than just satisfied when that person seems pleased with you. You spend significant mental energy outside work hours processing interactions with them. Your confidence in your own professional judgment has declined since this person became your manager or colleague, and you find yourself unable to clearly explain what is wrong to people outside your workplace despite knowing that something is. If 4 or 5 of those are true, the problem is not your performance. Here are 3 concrete steps. Step 1. Build a paper trail starting today, not for immediate use, for calibration and protection. Document decisions made, document feedback received, document who was credited for what and when. A written record of specific incidents over 60 days will make the pattern visible in a way that no single incident can. If this ever becomes a formal HR situation, that documentation is the difference between a complaint that goes nowhere and one that cannot be dismissed. Step 2. Identify one ally outside your direct reporting line, not to complain, to maintain an outside professional perspective on your work that is not filtered through your manager's narrative. A colleague in another team, a mentor in the organization. Someone whose assessment of your professional capability exists independently of the person manipulating the environment. That outside perspective is your reality anchor inside the institution. Step 3. Begin a quiet parallel job search immediately. Not because you are definitely leaving, because the single most powerful psychological shift available to someone inside a manipulative workplace is the knowledge that they have options. The moment you have an alternative, the psychological hold of the environment weakens significantly. You stop making decisions from desperation. Your nervous system stops treating the job as a threat to your survival. And paradoxically, that shift often improves your performance and your ability to navigate the environment with clarity. Options are not disloyalty. Options are the antidote to the exit prevention mechanism every controlled environment uses to keep you inside. Drop one word in the comments that describes how your workplace makes you feel right now. One word. I read every single one.